I'm co-founder and former CEO of Zipcar and another company called Venium, and I've done lots of failed companies you haven't heard about, and a lot of policy work thinking about the future of transportation. The dot-com bubble existed when I was writing the business plan, but before I'd raised any money, the NASDAQ had crashed. And so as I was doing this, I felt like I was surrounded by all these tales of, startupness and how cool it is. And when I was doing it, it is so brutally hard. And I remember one moment, there was this day in the middle of October where I was looking at all the numbers, and what I saw that was a fraction of what we expected to get, and I was 2 weeks from closing on our first round of financing. And I saw this news, and we were still working out of my house, and I went into my bedroom and wept, closed the door, and I wept for about 2 hours, and I was just so pissed off. I thought, no one says how hard this is. And all my friends know about this, the whole city knows about this, and it's a house of cards, and I've been selling a lie, and it's never gonna work. We went and looked harder at the numbers, and we realized that this was the first time anyone had been doing this in the US. And I wanna also remind you that what is the price of a car for an hour? No one had ever been charging car for an hour. And so I'd been playing with my numbers a lot, but what I realized is I had put too low a price on our daily rate, and we were never gonna make money at that rate. So I had to raise our daily rate by 20% and then by 25% again after that because insurance went up. And so I had to write this letter to email to the members and say, I'm gonna raise this rate by 25%. And I remember pushing the send button and just thinking, And walking to work the next morning, I was just like, oh my God, I'm just like dreading seeing what's gonna happen. And when I walked in the office, person, because we'd moved into our offices, person said to me, he said, Robin, 19 for you and 2 against. And I called up those 2 people who were against, and they had said, we're gonna tell the press, you suck, we're gonna quit, we're gonna tell all of our friends, you lied. And then I talked to them about it, and they became some of our biggest champions. And whenever I did press events, I would trot out these guys who definitely did not quit and loved the service. And people who liked it had said, yeah, we always thought it was too cheap. Don't worry, we know it's the beginning, it's so hard. And so it worked out. Right now, I'm really looking at the future of self-driving cars, and what's very interesting to me is through Zipcar, I understood really clearly how people evaluate what it costs to travel and what it costs to own their own car. I think about self-driving cars as kind of the tip of the spear for this enormous economic change, land use change, labor change. It's this opportunity in this moment in time in which I think, wow, we can take what is already a kind of tricky status quo and we can change it into something really spectacular. The entire dynamics of driving. It's going to change everything. In the 50s, they built the first sprawled suburban neighborhoods. And then because we had sprawled suburban neighborhoods, people had to get there, so we had to build highways there. So we built this giant national highway system. Once we had built faraway houses and highways, I feel like that infrastructure delivered the destiny we are living today. Everyone owns their own car. They drive every single place in them. All the highways are crowded, and we are very fat and unhealthy as a population. That infrastructure was our destiny. Transportation is the center of the universe. It is really the glue that binds everything together. It is your access to opportunity. So can I take that job? Can I go to the movie? Can I see my friend? Can I go to the gym? Can I go to the beach? All of those things are completely gated by your ability to get there. When I think about what we're about to do with these self-driving cars, the hell scenario is going to happen if we just keep doing what we're doing today. We don't change anything, we just say, let's wait and see how it's going to turn out, keep all the economics the same way. The congestion in cities will be pretty unbearable. We'll have a huge labor unrest and suffering and all the parts that goes with that. From a city tax revenue and spending perspective, we're going to have a collapse in some of their major revenue sources. If you think about when you own your own car and you say, I want some ice cream. I'm going to hop in that car. It's going to cost, 20 cents in gas. I'm not even going to think about it. But if you're going to rent a car, a whole bundle by the hour, So, whoa, it's going to cost me $10 to go buy that ice cream. Maybe I'm going to, eat those stale cookies, and maybe I'm going to get ice cream on my way home from work. What I realized is when people think about their own car ownership, they really are just thinking of the marginal cost, just the cost of that gas or tolls or parking, whereas when they're using a shared car, they have to pay the entire cost in. So we take those concepts and we go to the future of self-driving cars. If you own a self-driving car, and it happens to be electric, we didn't ever even think about our own body being in on that trip. Now, the single most expensive thing we're taking out of the car, your time, or a paid driver's time. When you take that out, it's really the cost to move an electric car is about $1.50 a mile. So I ask you, what would you not do for $1.50 a mile? You don't have to park it. It's going to be your personal servant doing whatever in heck you want. I left my iPhone at home. Please run back and get it. My kid wants an apple that I didn't pack at his lunch. Whatever. It's peak times. I don't care. Go get it. You will be sending it as your runner everywhere. We want to do the easy and cheap thing, and it's going to cost me no money, and it's not even my time. We will be using them all the time for very low value errands. And they might not be low value to us, but for a city, clogging those streets is a really big issue. If I think about our personal infrastructure, what's going on in my brain? There was a man, Daniel Kahneman, who wrote this beautiful book, Thinking Fast and Slow. And his thesis, he's a behavioral economist, is that we want to do the easiest thing every time. Like every time, I want to do the easiest thing. And the economics comes in second. Christmas time, my husband was telling me that Amazon had 1,000 products in which you could get 2-hour delivery. And if we think about Amazon Prime, you pay one time and then you get the whole year for free delivery. So I'm watching my husband, who consumes way more than I do, and the packages are coming in. One toothbrush delivered to my house, a screw delivered to my house. He said it was a difficult screw, it was a complicated screw, we needed this particular screw. And you're watching these deliveries come, and so what happens is there's this car driving around and coming to my house one at a time, and because I like things really easy. So now throw into this self-driving cars, where we can have at our beck and call these cars doing whatever we want. If I think about when we layer in self-driving cars into that equation from a retail perspective, whoa, I can put all of my goods into a car and not pay a driver and do home delivery. I'm going to close my shop and I'm going to be warehousing my inventory on the street so I can deliver to you in 10 minutes, 15 minutes. And so just picture that every store is going to be doing that. So the drugstore, there'll be little mini drugstores driving around. There'll be little mini liquor stores, little mini clothing stores, little mini whatever it is, the 1,000 most purchased items at Amazon. City governments right now make a huge amount of money from you paying for parking and from you doing the wrong things and getting parking tickets. Those two are really big sources of revenue. A self-driving car is never going to park. When I talk to people in the suburbs, they don't get that. But in a city, if I'm going to have to pay $2 an hour to park, I'm not even going to do that because it's going to cost me less than that to have it drive back to my house. And these cars won't ever get parking tickets because they're not going to be doing anything wrong. They're programmed to not break the law. When I'm talking to people who run self-driving car companies, I feel like they're sending like darts out of their eyes are being sent at me. Like, Robin, stop talking about this. This is a brand new industry. You're ruining it. Give us some time to get it together. And I think, you know what? Cities have spent the last 100 years learning what it means to have metal boxes moving on scarce city streets. That equation is not changing. You take out a driver or not, you still have metal boxes trying to fit through our scarce city streets. And that's what we have to deal with. What we found with Zipcar over the 18 years, and really well researched, is that maybe 30 to 35 people on average are sharing a car, and 40% of those people sell their cars. So each Zipcar that's on the street took 12 personal cars out of city streets, out of the parking spaces. So whenever you see a shared car, you say, yay, it's really opened up parking for you. What's been really intriguing, though, is that those shared cars are making people completely car satisfied. Their annual costs are dramatically dropping over owning their own cars. If we think about this future of heaven, that we can have this combination where you have this on-demand travel that you can do. So you can either rent the entire car by the hour and go with the same friend or by yourself as you do today. You'll be paying $10 an hour for that. Or you'll be able to buy a seat in a car and you'll be able to go wherever you want at a much lower price and be able to use the car or the mode that matches each specific trip, and it'll be quite straightforward. When we start using our streets more efficiently and getting more people in each car, and I want to say, doing this completely by choice. You're going to be doing it because it's cheaper for you. No one is going to make some crazy law that says you can't do something. You're going to do what you want to do, and what you're going to want to do is choose the cheap thing, the easy thing, and it will mean that you will not be parking your own car. You'll be taking a car that's already there. When that happens, all of that on-street parking on cities disappears. We are not going to need on-street parking in cities. And all those parking garages that you see around, we can get rid of those and turn them into, what do we need? Do we need more affordable housing? Do we need another park? Do we need a hospital? Do we need more offices? All of that scarce resources that we have in cities, we're now getting this opportunity to redo what's built in cities because what we need will be very different. We'll refresh the social contract with labor. We will think of new ways to pay for our uses of vehicles and how we pay for transportation. So we can rethink taxation. Fun or not, we will need to be doing that. There's something called mesh networking, which means that every device is not just a receiver of information, but kind of turns into a mini cell tower. And what I love about mesh networking is that it is a very low-cost infrastructure build in New York City. If we were to do congestion pricing, which the governor is discussing, or it's called vehicle miles traveled pricing, so instead of gas taxes, you'd be paying as you moved. We have a couple ways of implementing that. We could implement that through a mesh network, which would be to say, devices in people's cars, it could be my cell phone device, it could be another device, is now going to be a little mini cell tower. So I can send signals not just to big towers in the sky, but I can repeat them through cars and through people's cell phones. Each one of us is paying for our piece of this infrastructure. So it's what I love about mesh networking is that we're able to do this collaboratively built, collaboratively financed wireless infrastructure. So when I talk about transportation being the molten lava plates, the shifting tectonic plates, what is going to happen to the large car companies? They have spent their last century building cars and trying to persuade us all that we want to own a car. And they've done a fine job. I think in America, there's 1.1 car to every licensed driver. And in 2008, we've been now owning fewer cars. People are getting their licenses later. It's less of a status symbol. I can have my status in many, many other ways. So their industry is already kind of challenged. And when we start imagining that people aren't going to own cars, that they're going to just rent them when they need them, and even further, we're going to be sharing some of those cars, it really puts a huge pressure, huge pressure on them. And they're the ones who will tell you, oh, no, self-driving cars, that's going to happen in 20, 25 years, because it's killing their existing business model. But if you ask the people who are startups building self-driving cars, those guys will tell you, oh, yeah, it's in 5 years. Oh, yeah, it's in 2 years. They're the ones because they don't have any status quo to protect. And I want to say for those large car companies, I appreciate that it's going to be really, really hard because they have existing contracts out. They have dealerships. They have factories. They have workers. How are they going to make this transition is really, really challenging. But we need to be honest about that. Those companies really could go down because it's going to be another company that doesn't have that workforce, that doesn't have those factories, that doesn't have to worry about those issues, who's going to come in and eat your lunch. Waymo, which is Google's autonomous vehicle, and they are also going to be doing shared autonomous trips, similar service as Uber and Lyft. Tesla, who has got cars that are semi-autonomous, Tesla has announced that they will also facilitate you sharing your own car with others. So you'll be able to rent out your own car with others as long as it's to another Tesla owner. And when I was hearing this, I thought, Elon, networks are everything. You want to make your network as large as possible. You don't want to just restrict people who are renting Teslas to other owners who already own Teslas. You want to be opening it to as many people and as many cars as possible, because that is how networks work. The bigger, the better. The faster the car can get to you, the more people you can share with, the better the trip is. If you think about Uber and Lyft right now, they've both declared quite openly that they will be using self-driving cars for those shared trips. And so the price will be coming down dramatically, and many of us are experiencing what it feels like to do that today. So I, get out my smartphone, here's where I am, I want to go to this destination, tells you the price, and if I want to do it cheaper, I say, yeah, I want to share the trip. We're in the early days of that shared trip, and so Uber Pool and Lyft Line and Uber Express, I'm really excited about, because it's teaching us what it feels like to go to an app and put in our origin destination. But right now, that is less than 1% of a city's trips. And so imagine in a city like San Francisco or New York, about 35 to 40% of the trips are being done by public transit. We'll still be doing that because of the traffic. It's faster to go underground. But 40% of those trips are people above ground in their own cars. If you take up all those trips and now you're putting everyone is putting their origin and destination in, it means that I'll be able to get ride matches really quickly and cheaply. A couple of years ago, I was reading about self-driving cars and actually was on a stage doing a fireside chat, and a person from the audience asked about the future of self-driving cars. And the person I was with, who was very important, who will remain nameless, he gave an answer that made it seem like self-driving cars were so far in the future. And when I heard his answer, I was like, what? You are making it seem like this isn't going to happen for 25 or 30 years, and we are right here at this minute that like 5 car companies have promised that they will be selling cars by 2021. And we know that Google's Waymo has been running cars around in Phoenix without anyone in the front seat for the last 6 months, and they're about to do that same thing in San Francisco. So driverless cars, if you're ever arguing with someone and they're telling you, no, it's not going to happen for 20 years, what they mean is level 5, anytime, anywhere, any place, won't happen for 25 years. When the first self-driving car hits your city, I think it'll be about 5 or 6 years when 80% of the cars in that city will be self-driving. And you're thinking, whoa, how could it possibly be so fast? If we think about innovations where both the supply side and the demand side has a dramatically lower economic level, that's going to pull us in. So from the supply side, if I have to pay for a driver as a taxi, as a delivery truck, as a bus, if I have to pay for a driver, that is 30 to 60% of my cost. If I can do it without a driver, I'm definitely getting an autonomous vehicle. And then think about yourself. Right now, the second most expensive thing you buy is your car. And it is sitting around doing nothing 95% of the time. So if you could only pay as you go and have it at the snap of your fingers, you're going to start using someone else's car. Right now, I am building a huge worldwide collaboration. And really, when I think about my tectonic plates that are shifting, I am hoping to build this large worldwide collaboration where we are all shooting for these future of cities that are sustainable, livable, and just. So last year, I'd already been thinking about this for a year, and I thought, oh my God, this technology is coming. And I was really struck by the fact that Zipcar was a technology that came into cities that caused some chaos, and then Uber and Lyft are causing more chaos. And it was really striking to me that cities do not say, here's what we want, here's where we want to go. And I was talking actually to a tech company, and they said, cities don't tell us what they want, and they're yelling at us afterwards that that's not what they wanted. So a year ago, I pulled together, I convened a bunch of experts who've been working in transportation in cities for decades. We came up with these 10 principles. We call them shared mobility principles for livable cities. We launched it last November in Taiwan, and there were 1,000 people there, 600 mayors, and they adopted these set of principles. February 5th, we announced that we had 15 of the world's largest passenger service providers who signed on. Those entities move 76 million people every single day. Uber, Lyft, and Didi, and Ola, which is out of India. The companies that are doing the transit apps like City Mapper and Transit app signed on, Zipcar signed on, and many of the large transit authorities that are moving people signed on. So they saw these principles and they said yes. And the principles are things like we want to think about building buildings and transportation together. No more putting a whole bunch of buildings out there in the middle of nowhere and thinking, oh, people have to get someplace. No, we're going to think about getting someplace at the same time as we build the building. And we're going to think about moving people and not cars. So it's not how many cars I can park, it's how many people can I get to places. There's things like fair user fees across all modes. I was struck by the fact that today the signals that cities are sending out everywhere is, you know what? I don't care if you take your bike to go someplace that has no pollution and a very small footprint, or if you take your 25-year-old minivan that's been poorly maintained and is spewing disgusting stuff. Those things are the same to me, when in fact, they are not the same. Cities do not think they're the same. We would much rather that you went in a clean vehicle with a small footprint than taking something big during peak hours. But right now, cities are pricing those things exactly the same. You aren't getting any of those signals. So fair pricing across all modes would mean, you know what? When you have a dirty stuff come out of your tailpipe, you're going to pay for air pollution, as you should, because it's causing huge billions of dollars every year to pay for that. You know, you're going to pay for the parking that you're using when it's in a street that doesn't have enough parking. It's how markets work, that when we have scarcity, we put the right price to reduce the scarcity. So we have a common narrative and a common path. And it's very high level because one of the other reasons that I love transportation is that it is really complicated. Bike sharing in San Francisco is totally different than bike sharing in Amsterdam, right? So flat versus steep. Or car-to-go, one-way car sharing, when you're living in a city like Washington, D.C., where there's work, living, and restaurants all together in the same blocks with a great transportation system, it's one thing. And when you're in Houston, where things are really spread apart and one-way car sharing just doesn't work. So anyway, transportation is tricky. These principles are very high level, so they apply to 90% of the cities worldwide. More and more companies, more big companies and small companies, local governments and some national governments have all been signing on. We all are saying, you know what? We want to be on the side of fantastic cities that are livable and sustainable and just, and that's where we want to go, into this new future that is the heaven future, the much more beautiful and delightful place to live future that produces a survivable planet and also a place that you really want to live. I think it'll be way nicer than what we have today.